international cooperation in internal security. India has played an important role in global initiative on disaster management with multidimensional initiatives and expertise. India is taking a leading role in strengthening regional cooperation among South Asian countries for reducing disasters. Further, India has hosted the SARC Disaster Management Center in New Delhi with a clear mandate for enhancing regional cooperation. India is a signatory to the HIGRO framework of action and is committed to achieving the goals set under it through systematic and sustained efforts under the 5 priority action areas mentioned in the framework. HIGRO framework of action. Representatives from 168 countries participated in the Global Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction on January 2005 in Kobe, Japan. The HIGO Framework of Action 2005-2015 was adopted to work globally towards sustainable reduction of disaster losses in lives and in the social, economic and environmental assets of communities and countries. The framework set 3 strategic goals and 5 priority actions areas given as under. 3 strategic goals following are the goals as agreed to under the HFA. The more effective integration of disaster risk reduction into sustainable development policies, planning and programming at all levels, with a special emphasis on disaster prevention, mitigation, preparedness and vulnerability reduction. The development and strengthening of institution, mechanism and capacities at all levels, in particular at the community levels, that can systematically contribute to building resilience to hazards. The systematic incorporation of risk reduction approaches into the design and implementation of emergency preparedness, response and recovery programs in the reconstruction of the affected communities. 5 priority action areas under the HFA. The following priority areas have been identified for the countries to concentrate in their efforts for making the countries disaster resilient. Ensure that disaster risk reduction is a national and a local priority with a strong institutional basis for implementation. Identify, access and monitor disaster risks and enhance early warning. Use knowledge, innovation and education to build a culture of safety and resilience at all levels. Reduce the underlying risk factors. Strengthen disaster preparedness for effective response at all levels. Key activities: promote socio-economic development practices, land use planning and other technical measures, strengthening of institutional and technical capacities, review the implement preparedness and contingency plans, promote volunteerism and community participation, creation of provision of emergency funds, dialogue, coordination and exchange of information between disaster managers and development sectors. India is one of the participating countries and works closely with the UN ISDR. Read further to implemented by the priority areas of HFA for DRR. There is a biennial monitoring framework developed by UNISDR and a national progress report submitted accordingly with UNISDR to implement the framework activities. A working group has been constituted under the chairmanship of Joint Secretary DMMHA, and the group comprises representatives from ministries of rural development, panchayat raj, urban development, health and family welfare, environment and forest, women and child development, earth sciences, science and technology, and also from Planning Commission, MIDM and MDMA. agencies of United Nations involved in the disaster management. There are various UN organizations engaged in the field of disaster management. Many of much organizations have direct linkages with UN mainstream body, whereas others are involved or developed from region of Asia, which have been most vulnerable to earthquake and cyclone. India has been actively involved in their setting up besides being members on the basis of its full-time membership. United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction UNISDAR. At the end of the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction on July 1999, an international program forum adopted the Geneva Mandate on Disaster Reduction together with the strategy document. The forum recommended that in international cooperative framework for disaster reduction, the maintained the strengthened in December 1999 General Assembly Resolution 54/219 created the UNISDR as a successor of the Secretariat in the International Decades of Natural Disaster Reduction in 2001. Assembly Resolution 56/196 mandated the Secretariat to serve as a focal point in the United Nations system for a coordination of disaster reduction and to ensure synergies among the disaster reduction activities of the United Nations system and regional organizations and activities in socio-economic and humanitarian fields. In 2005, the Assembly through Resolution 60/195 endorsed the Hague Declaration, and the Hague Declaration framed for Action 2005 to 2015, Building the Resilience of Nations and Communities to Disaster, adopted by the World Conference on Disaster Reduction held in Kobe, Hague, Japan. The Hague Framework for Action has tasked the ISDR Secretariat with supporting the implementation for the strategic objectives identified therein. Mission in order to build the resilience of nations and communities to disasters through the implementation of the HFA. The UNISDR strives to catalyze, facilitate and mobilize the commitment to resources of natural regions and international stakeholders of the ISDR system. The mission of UNISDR is to be an effective coordinator and guide all its ISDR partners globally and regionally to mobilize political and financial commitment to disaster risk reduction and Hague Framework for Action 2005-2015, Building the Resilience of Nations and Communities to Disasters, or HFA. Development and sustain a robust multi-stakeholder system, provide relevant knowledge and guidance. Functions and responsibilities. The International Strategy for Disaster Reduction was adopted by United Nations member states in 2000 and is owned by local, national, regional and international organizations. UNISDR is led by an Assistant Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction and overseen by Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, who also serves as a chair for the wider ISDR system of partnership, and the mandate of UNISDR to act as a focal point in the United Nations system for the coordination of disaster reduction and to ensure that disaster risk reduction becomes integral part to sound and equitable development, environmental protection and humanitarian action. United Nations Disaster Assessment and Coordination. The United Nations Disaster Assessment and Coordination Team is a standby team of disaster management professionals which are nominated and funded by members' government. OCHA, UNDP, and operational humanitarian United Nations agencies such as World Food Programme, United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and World Health Organization, UNDAC, is designed to assist the United Nations and governments of a disaster affected country in meeting international needs for early and qualified informing during the first phase of a sudden onset on emergency, as well as the coordination of incoming international relief at the national level and or at the site of the emergency. In UNDAC team is a United Nations team for multinational personnel trained in disaster management for rapid assessment of priority needs and on-site coordination of international assistance. The term members are international disaster emergency managers from all parts of the world under the UNDAC system. Whenever a major disaster strikes a country and international assistance is warranted, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs deputes to team experts trained in UNDAC system to carry out an assessment.